wonderful information session. We've got, well, aren't we really lucky to have Sara Wernham here, and author, and also we're going to be talking you through the decodables and giving you some excellent ideas on how you can use them, because they're more than just a book, aren't they, Sara?
They are indeed. They're resources you've bought and spent money on, so you need to make the most of them.
And the one thing we appreciate as being teachers is that when you're in the classroom and you're reusing a resource, we want to make it something that's valuable, but also that the children want to go back and look at it again. But before we move on, there's something that we need to clear is that the session does not give a certificate. It is only a session for your information about how to use the books, and there is no certificate given for the session. So now that we've got that, we're going to move on. And first of all, something that really is extremely helpful is Sara is going to talk to us about how the decodables work and why we need the decodables, because there's often a little bit of confusion about the point of having them running alongside the program. So welcome. We're really glad that you're here. And wow, we're up to about nearly 500 people. So I should imagine you're from all over the place. And I'm briefly looking at the messages. Can you see, Sara? We've got Cape Town, we've got Holland,
Annette.
We've got everyone. So it's absolutely lovely to see you here. Wonderful. And thank you. We do appreciate your time. So, Sara, here we go. I'm going to hand over the first part to you. So, what are decodable readers?
So it's always best to start at the beginning, we've decided. And so we're going to start off by, defining what decodable readers are and why we need them. And why are they different from other books in reading schemes or types of books? So basically, decodable readers, and I think, although this is obvious, it is a very important thing to stress, they are books designed for children learning to read. And I always stress this to begin with, because, people often say, oh, but, they haven't got a lot of words in them, or they've only got certain words in them, or they're not always very exciting, are they? And I say, no, that's possibly true. But the excitement in them is the fact that the children are able to read them for themselves because of the type of books that they are. I am not, when I'm writing a decodable reader, thinking that I'm going to be winning the Carnegie Medal for Children's Literature next year. Okay. I hope they're enjoyable. but the whole point of them is that they are designed for children learning to read, which means that each book only uses letter sounds, graphemes, and tricky words that the children have been taught, because one of the big things in Jolly is that we always say we never ask children to do things we haven't taught them how to do or we know they are able to do. So for decodable readers, they are decodable because the children know enough about the code at that particular time to read the words that are in them, and they build up across the levels using the new letter sounds, graphemes, and tricky words children are taught as they go through the program. Okay, and this is the same whichever scheme you're using. Obviously we're talking about Jolly today, but other schemes are exactly the same. They will build up the decodable readers that are connected to their program using the progression of sounds and tricky words and things that that particular scheme uses. Because we are restricting the letter sounds, graphemes, and tricky words, they do have a controlled vocabulary. That can be a good thing, because actually, particularly if you're using them teaching children for whom English is a second or a foreign language, of course, if you've got that sort of defined vocabulary, it makes it easier to teach that vocabulary and comprehension. And in order for them to, understand the books that they're reading. Now, there's been lots of changes in our national curriculum and thinking about reading and things in recent years, and an amount of research, funny enough, not on decodable books, but in 2021, our Department of Education issued the advice that they call the essential core criteria for phonics programs in schools. And it says that texts and books in Key Stage 1 that you ask children to read independently. So this isn't books you're reading to them. This is a book you're giving children for them to read themselves, that they should be fully decodable for them at every stage of the program. They must be composed entirely of words made up of grapheme, phoneme correspondences that a child has learned up to that point, with the exception of a small number of common exception words, so they're the tricky words, that the child has learned as part of the program. And in the early stages, even these should be kept to a minimum, and that practice with these decodable texts will help to make sure children experience success and that they learn to rely on phonics strategies. And that's a very important thing to ensure and to encourage the children to do. Why? I may or may not hear you ask. Okay, so why decodable readers? There are other sorts of readers. In the past, readers have been either very simple books, or it's been a book where the picture has more or less directly told the child what's going on. So if we pretend this is a page from a decodable reader, we've got the nice picture of a red car, and underneath we have the sentence, I can see a red car. Well, that's fine. If they've learned the tricky word I, which is our first tricky word, then the rest of the words are perfectly decodable according to the Jolly Phonics scheme. So that's no problem. Turn the page over. Okay. Now, I can see a green car. Okay. Again, the sentence is fine. It is decodable. It matches the picture. But what happens is the children in these, what we call predictable texts, what the children say is that the next page that they turn over, they don't even bother looking at the writing. Oh, I know what it says. I can see an orange car. So basically, they've learned that all they're doing is changing the colour word, which matches the picture. And that's all they need to do, which isn't true. Apart from anything else, at some point in life, you will lose the pictures. So you do need to read the words because otherwise, what are you going to do? Okay. And also, you know, they need to understand those words, those colour words, out of the context of a sentence and without the photograph. So red they would probably do, and green wouldn't be so much of a problem either. Orange may or may not get. But again, we say, if they've only been reading them because they've been reading the picture, then they are going to struggle when they are left with just the words that they need to read. And then if a picture like this comes up, what do they say? I can see a grey car. I can see, what can I see? I can see lots of cars. So they start trying to guess, because everything's been very same and just changing a few things, one thing. They try and guess what it will be rather than looking at the sentence and the words, which is what they were supposed to be reading. And again, in fact, the sentence under here is they, which is one of our tricky words, which hopefully they will have learned, are the same, are stuck in a traffic jam. Although the sentence is for them perfectly decodable, because they've got into the habit of looking at pictures, they don't necessarily automatically look and read the words, which is a problem. And as I say, we are supposed to be encouraging to make sure they read the words and not read the pictures. If you give them the readers that are not decodable, i.e. they have letter sound correspondences that have not yet been taught, then they don't know what it says. It's just, you might as well just, as I say, put symbols in. It's only when they've cracked that code and you've got the proper words there, because they understand the huge, they wouldn't necessarily understand unless they've covered the soft G, the white with the WH and the I hop over E. So we need to make sure that what we're asking them to read, they are capable and have the knowledge of reading, because otherwise they will end up guessing, which is the same, not strategy. We want them to read. And the next slide has a quote that I think is brilliant. I love this quote. There is no comprehension strategy powerful enough to compensate for the fact that you can't read the words. Okay, so I mean, that is for systematic synthetic phonics, full stop. That you know, we want them to be independent readers. But if you've got readers that are not decodable and they can't get the words off the page, then they're never ever going to be able to read that book, to read that page. So, as I say, we want to make sure that they really are reading the words. They don't get lulled into this false sense of security that all they need to do is look at the picture and change a word, or we don't want to get them into any sort of guessing strategy at all, because that isn't using the skills that we are teaching them. Now, as soon as they have learnt some letter sounds, then we start blending with them in class orally, saying to them, "Sat." Can you hear a word? Sat. And each time we teach a new letter sound, we talk about, we blend, we segment more words with them that have those sounds in them. And in Jolly Phonics, we always say we like you to wait until all 42 letter sounds, or almost all 42 letter sounds, have been taught, and that the child is able to blend before you give them a book to read. This is very simply because at this stage, the thing they should be concentrating on is learning the sounds, okay, and learning the skill of blending and getting better at it. The moment you give them a book, then the attention of the child and the parent turns to the book, and instead of learning and going through those sounds every night, they will go through the book. Now, once you get to the point where you give them readers, that's important. But before that, it's that repetition and the learning of the sounds that gets the skill and the knowledge that the child needs into their head. So, by giving them books that they can read, it gives you the chance to work on all the things that you're supposed to be doing. Now, we have a range of readers going from the little word books right through up until purple. We're not going to go through them all today because that's not what the point of our little webinar today is. But as you can see, the books go up in the number of words, the number of sounds, the number of tricky words, the number of sentences in them. So you're building up the child's knowledge and understanding and allowing them to develop and scaffold that development as we go up the readers. But you give a child a reading book, okay, and on the whole, most of them, when they're at this stage, they read one a night, which is great. And then you put the book back on the shelf. Okay, we have repeating characters and themes and things within the books. And again, as I say, with the restricted vocabulary, you've got words that children are familiar with and using. So actually, there is so much more you can do with the decodable reader than just read it. As I say, one child reads it one night, goes back on the shelf, other children read it, but that's their only interaction with it. We can get so much more from it, can't we, Yvonne?
Oh, gosh, yes. And the one thing I think that is so important is that the decodable gives the chance for the opportunity for the children to put all that knowledge in use. They themselves are having that wonderful leap from the curiosity with print to suddenly something is actually making sense. And it doesn't just have to be the pictures, as you said. And it's a very good point to make, is that we've learned a lot now about how that cueing system that children use by using the visual cues doesn't always work. And there's been a lot of research about that recently, which we probably can look at in another webinar in the future. So I am sorry, there's a lot of people contacting me saying they can't get on the platform. We have reached our limit. So my apologies if anyone out there has friends who have tried to get on. We have reached our limit. But you know what? We've got to crack on because they can see the webinar. And as you can see here, we have creativity starts here. And what we have got are some of the ways that children like to tell a story, because Sarah, storytelling doesn't start with writing, does it? And most of the time we set ourselves up for failure as a teacher by thinking in 40 minutes we can achieve an awful lot and get some creative writing done. It doesn't work like that, does it?
It doesn't. And often when I'm training, I will say to teachers, right, okay, next 10 minutes, I want you to write me a quick story, and I show them a picture. And they look horrified. And these people who are literate and who are used to writing and things. But again, it's the idea of for a small child, then you are asking them to do something they don't necessarily have experience of. So before we even ask them to write something, we need them to be able to retell stories, or to even just tell us a sentence, and to do it orally before then write it down, because you can't possibly write it down unless you can express it. So reading to children, reading stories to children is hugely important, and then getting children to retell the story, just tell you their favourite part, if that's all it is, draw a picture of their favourite part. You've got an awful lot of work before you can get children to start telling and writing stories for themselves.
Yes, and one of the things I love about the strategy of the storyboard is that you are hearing a lot of things from the child. They're listening to the story along with the decodables. It's exactly like the decodables. If you have them as group reading or read aloud as the teacher, and then you move on to the children. But what they're doing is exemplifying knowledge that they've taken from that. And one thing that I would say is that we often get quite a lot of information, not only about phonemic awareness, but also how the children are listening and their comprehension level can come through in the story. And also, I'm a big fan of drawings, because drawings also help for children to be able to show their knowledge. But also, Sarah, we get a lot of cross-curricular themes coming through, don't we? So it's not only about what they hear in the story, but what they add to it.
Absolutely. And reading to children and talking about what you're reading and talking about the story is where a lot of comprehension, develops. Is how comprehension develops. If it's your native tongue, and it's very much how comprehension develops if it's not your native tongue, because how are you going to hear and experience these words unless you're sharing stories and talk and other things with the children?
Yeah. And one of the things I would say is that drawing a picture or doing a storyboard puts the child in a place of comfort, because they know that when they go back to that story or that image that you can see here, they might have a go at trying to write. If you talk through the story, they're looking at a familiar thing that they've done. It's like, yeah, I did that drawing. And then they go back to it and look at it here. I love the fact that we have children doing letter formation. They're having a go. And this is what we want to see, Sarah, isn't it? But often having that story narrative is a really important way for children to put it into a context. If you just say to a child, draw a story about, or draw a sunny day, they often think, I don't have enough information, because small children are building up all their knowledge of the life around them. So a story actually gives them a narrative that they can work with to have some great drawings. And I think what I'm looking at here and showing, Sarah, are our expectations can really vary on what a child of the same age can produce.
Yeah, and Sue has a fantastic video where she's laid out on a table just the piece of writing from her entire class, from the worst to the best, to show the absolute range within one class, from those who are just starting to write the odd word or a sentence to the pages. So it's really interesting, that range within the class, and in particular for writing. But you will have a huge range within the class, and that's normal. And if you learn to cope with sort of differentiation by outcome in these, and you encourage and help and scaffold everything to encourage the children to enjoy and to write well.
And additionally, what you can see here, we've got different structures where we have the story and then the writing, a confident child who is happy to do the writing. And here, this is a great way for children who may be on an IEP or SEND, where we're giving them the opportunity to have listened to maybe that story, the decodable story, and may have had an opportunity to read or participate, and this is their interpretation. Now, one of my favorite things about this is if you record that child giving you their narrative about what they have written or they've drawn, you can hear an awful lot. Can't you hit, Sarah, like vocabulary, sounds, so many different things. But how do we start the creative writing process? And you're probably thinking, what's this got to do with decodable readers? Now, decodable readers offer the children to be able to learn about the context of how you can have a beginning and a middle and the end. Because, Sarah, children are kind of all right at the beginning, they're kind of fuzzy in the middle, and they're not very good with the end, are they?
No, as I say, making up a story is quite a big ask, even for an adult. There's a lot of things to organise, a lot of thoughts to organise. You need your story to be logical, which isn't necessarily always everyone's natural thought process. There's a lot going on in your head the whole time. And then on top of all that, we're asking them to write words and sentences and things that they may not be fluent at. So you've got to start thinking, what sounds in here? And write, not into that sentence. And where was I going to go next? There is a huge amount of stuff going on in anybody's head when they're writing a story.
Yeah. And the one good thing about using the decodable is they've got a lot of the structure they need in that. They've got vocabulary they can take from that and attempt to put into their own kind of flow of rewriting the story, because rewriting the story is a great way to start the creative writing process. But also, I think, Sarah, we remember as being with, as a teacher in the classroom, time and structuring of your lesson is hugely important. And also, what are you planning for? Because sometimes it's like, we're just going to do creative writing, but what are you planning reading and writing together for? Are you planning it for observations of phonemic awareness, for tricky words? Are you looking at it for construction, the sentences? I think, Sarah, there has to be some kind of plan as well behind the creative writing and using a decodable so that teachers have an objective.
Absolutely. You want to encourage children to become fluent and independent writers. In order to do that, they need to be happy both in the writing and in the thinking and in the comprehension and the vocabulary they're using. You be sure that what you're asking them to do is within the expectations of what they should be able to do.
And also that big word there, ability, because a child born in January may not have the same abilities as a child born in December when they're so young in the class. So we've got to be mindful of that as well. And the decodables offer a great foundation for writing a story. So there's a familiar page, one that we all know and love from the big books or from the Jolly Classroom. And here, we're organizing our thoughts. And as you can see, we have the visual cues, we're giving language a context, but what else can we do using this visual cue? We can get children to talk about their feelings, colors. Do you like bees? What sound do they make? So this can be a great way to actually start as a platform to energize children to start thinking about what goes in their story. Isn't that correct, Sarah?
Yeah, and not just saying, what can you see in the picture? what are the bees doing? It's all the normal sort of things, what's the little girl's name? Okay, that's creating immediately, because they're not being told they've got to make that up. What's she doing? What's she pretending to be? Why is she in the garden? And once you start asking them questions, then you start building those creative thought processes.
Yeah, because one of the things children do struggle with is inventing a character, because they need to have, and so there's visual clue. Is she happy? Is she sad? What's her name? Give her a description, talk about what she's wearing. We're actually building great scaffolding. And here we get to my favorite books. My favorite books are the monsters. Now, Sarah, you know why they're my favorites, because we can use them with anything.
Yeah, they're brilliant. I love them too. And there's just so much scope within them. And of course, they're not gender or race specific. They're just monsters. And anyone can imagine monsters.
And there's a question there. I'm going to reach out to you all to just put something in your chat box about, how would you use these books? Now, these books are great because they are packed with images, and children can really think about doing lots of things with monsters. But we're just going to give you a moment to put in the chat box, how do you use your decodable readers? How would you use these books? And we're getting some answers through now. And one of the things also is about, there's so many variations of monsters in these, and this is why we picked these today, that you can really spread that out. We could write a play and act it out. We could do a rhyme. We could do a play in class. Lots of oralization here. We can do role play. Brilliant. And I like the fact, Sarah, that they're saying children can role play, because that really gives it a context, doesn't it? Crafts.
Yeah.
We can do picture talk. Make masks of the monsters, group discussion. Absolutely lovely. Yes. And that's what we want to hear, because it's not a one-dimensional resource, but it's one that can be used in many ways. Besides what Sarah mentioned at the beginning, which is hugely important about the reason why, but what I'm mentioning now is about, if you've bought that decodable, if you've got that book in the class and the children have read it, for us, it is a resource that can be used over and over again. And we're going to show you how. So keep your finger on that chat box button. We want you to keep moving in. What noises? Just imagine you're sitting in that classroom. Just imagine we've done this decodable. Just imagine we're showing you a monster. What kind of noise does your monster make? Let's have a look in the chat. What noise does your monster make? Now just imagine your 6-year-old sitting in the classroom. You have that image of that monster in your mind. What sound does it make? Are you looking at this, Sarah? We've got grunting, scary noise. Ooh, we've got all of these. This is great. You're great. We want kids like you. Oomph, oomph.
I'm just wondering, can I pronounce some of them? Ooh,
yeah. Yeah, these are absolutely brilliant noises. And the one good thing is that, we have noises in the book. And the monsters, they stomp and stamp and bash and crash and flap and clap and wail and shout and bang and clang. Now, Sarah, these are great for children. Why are these noises great for children?
Well, they're onomatopoeic, but they can act. They can act all out. They're quite simple words and words that they understand. I mean, a lot of the noises, the sounds from the monsters that we're getting in the chat box, again, they're having to make those words up. They're having to think, oh, now I want him to say whatever it is, woo, woo. Now, because they're not going to know that. So they learn to sound things out. So it's not just regurgitating known knowledge.
Yeah.
And then they've got all these lovely words that they can say. You can act them out, make the sounds for them. Lots of sideways understanding here.
Yeah, and the one thing, and I've done it in my class, and I think you've done it, Sarah, as well, is actually let them make a lot of noise, actually do it all. The stomping, the crashing, the bashing, let them get it out of their system. But you know what? They will remember, even as English as a second language, if they find out what a stomp is, they'll remember what a stomp is because you let them do it. So that's where we're thinking about the gross motor skills coming into our decodables. And here we go. People think decodables is just a book. It's a lot more than a book. Now, we've loved this session because Sarah and I have thought about many different ways that you can use the book. And if you think about the book, our monsters need to eat. Now, just imagine you're that child in the classroom and we want to say, is your monster hungry? What does your monster eat? Now, you're very welcome to put that in the chat box, but children love this bit because you know what they can make up? Look at this, basilea, chocolate, pizza, cereal, but you might actually make up a particular food for your monster. So, Sarah, from the point of writing and imagination and putting sounds together, this is really good.
It is, and actually further back up in the chat, Annette was saying that she has a section of work and they think up food, they write a menu, they decorate it. Again, you're not just writing story menus, so that's a different thing to write. Then you've got somebody's just put snoz canvas like in the BFG. So again, you can go out into other bits of literature. There are some fantastic, horrible recipes. George's Marvelous Medicine and all sorts of other things within literature, which again, you can broaden out the children's experience with things.
Yeah, but also these are short pieces. These are short, manageable writing pieces that children don't feel overwhelmed. And also, if you bring in visual cues like these ones, I love this green spaghetti. Now, could you just imagine adding some of this to your story, the story, and having some Google images and just say, what do you think of those? So we're even getting more words. So we're not actually saying you're using an adjective, but what they are doing is describing what they can see. And later on, when we do get to that teaching point, they'll remember, the describing word was an adjective. So this is great way, visual cues, but visual excitement that also just empowers the child reading the book. And as they move on from that, we can do something a little bit more exciting. Now, this is an exciting moment for me because I have to go out of the slideshow and into our video. So here we go. Just imagine you are in. Oh, that didn't play very well. Let's try again. It didn't start from the beginning. So you're in class, you see something. What do you think you could see in class? What could it be? Now, this is a little warm-up for our children. We're getting them excited about the activity we're going to do. Now, this activity, we love this, don't we, Sarah? This activity, it's just brilliant. It's just brilliant because before class started, children have no idea who made these footprints everywhere. What could it be? Who could it be? What size is it? Does it have a tail? What color could it be? Now, can you see this line of inquiry? It's just wonderful. And we love it, Sarah, because you can clean it up easily as well. But Sarah, why do we think children love this type of activity?
Well, it makes it, it's an investigation for, it's not just, you're not just telling them something, they're not just regurgitating something. Saying your favorite part of the story is great, but as you say, we want to scaffold them onto more imaginative stuff. And here we have only a footprint to go on. So you can start saying to them what size is it, and they've got something that they can use. Yes, they're not just guessing about nothing. They've got this footprint on the floor. Something's been into the classroom. Is it still here? There's so much other bits and mystery and things that you can imbibe into what you're doing. So what does it look like? What do you think it looks like? And they start talking to each other. And then once they start talking to each other, they then you can then start drawing some of these ideas and things out, and getting some ideas of what this monster might actually be.
Well, I think also, as we can see here, as we talked about planning and we talked about what your outcomes are going to be for your session, there's some here, you could be looking at, and we're going to be inquiries, there are questions, talking and listening. We're covering a lot of concepts here with this activity. And this activity gets extended out. Look, there's footprints that are now outside the classroom. So where did it go? So many of you have put in here about role play and the children can talk about it, and drama. But just imagine how many other areas we're reaching. We probably haven't planned for it by addressing children's different learning styles, but also imagination and creativity. If we've done the Monsters book, this is now going to fall very well into the next process of using the book to help us start to do some creative writing. And apart from that, this is a great way to start, isn't it, Sarah? Because look at these monsters. I love the fact that children are starting to draw what they are already going to write about. As we've mentioned, the stories, having the drawing is a great starting point. But also here we can get a lot of language coming through, and children getting very animated about what they're going to write about. And all right, Sarah, just imagine you've done this. Describe it to me.
Right, so they've got their drawing of a monster. So I might first of all ask them what I consider to be a relatively straightforward question, and ask what the name of their monster is. And I can explain to them that the name can be anything. It might be a made-up name. It doesn't have to necessarily be a name that they know. It may be a name that they like or they don't like, as it's a monster. But we start off with quite simple things. And then you'll say, describe your monster to me. So they will describe the physical characteristics to start with. So then you can use that to lead them on and say, okay, but what, is it a nice monster? Is it a nasty monster? Is it a scary monster? Is it a happy monster? Can it fly? Can it run? So you can start again asking questions, getting them together in pairs or in groups, and getting them to start fleshing their monster out from this black 2D drawing that they've done to be a real thing, a real monster in their imagination.
And Annette has mentioned get children talking to each other to describe. Now imagine if you have English as a second language, you might only be using key vocabulary. It might be a mixture. But even so, if we're getting that vocabulary out, that's the main thing, the confidence in speaking. And also, if I had this one and the child said, I said, what color is it? And they said, pink. So I said, what does pink? Tell me the sound that you can hear at the beginning of pink. I'd get them to do the action. I'd also get them to try and blend and segment that word, pink. I also could be talking about how many eyes does she have? What color is this? So not only are we looking at our phonics, but also cross-curricular language as well. Making connections, bringing that child to all those teaching points. And here's a good way for us to look at the real skills that can be involved. Have a go, children. Look at that. This blue and red. Now that's a difficult one. Blue. This monster, dotty, big ears. I would be delighted if my child had to go and did something like this. And again, working collaboratively, this would be very ambitious for one child of their own, but the teacher can be scribing. You can make their own posters. And also, understanding that this is how it starts, with very small sentences and moving on and moving on. Creative writing is a process, just like reading, and writing usually takes a lot longer. But we've got our decodables for you now, because look who we have here. In the onesie, we have a secret monster here. Sarah likes to dress up in her onesie. But could you imagine going into class dressed up like that? You become the monster that children are like, wow, my teacher really is a monster. And Sarah, perhaps you'd like to talk us through about this page, what we could do with this page.
Okay, so it's sort of about bringing that page to life. If possible, I persuade somebody else to wear the monster onesie, but if I myself, then I will. But we can, discover the monster. Perhaps we're talking about it inside, and then we've got a pretend pond. I don't make people sit in water really, but an empty paddling pool, and they're sitting recreating that page from the book, and then we can go outside and discover the monster, and they can ask questions, decide what it's doing, where it's going, what the present is. A huge amount of vocabulary that you can get out of this. But again, it's structured role play, because you've got somebody who isn't a 5-year-old child in the onesie. Then you can get the children to ask the monster questions, because asking questions is a skill in itself, and they can answer. They can say, what's your name and what are you doing? And he's saying, I'm going to a party. Whose party is it? If the children are older, then you could get one of them, they can take it in turns to pretend they're monster. They can dress up as their monsters, from the pictures that they've drawn. And again, the other children can interview them and find out more information. But the more alive it is in their head, the more likely it is that they're going to be able to think of and write an interesting story.
Yeah, and I think more than anything, look at this page. We would have read this book, Sarah, wouldn't we? The children would have read this book, and we're going back now to revisit. And they might remember elements of this page. They might remember. But what we can say is, just imagine you are sitting in that water, and the water's a bit, isn't it? Can you describe what it feels like? And you can say to the children, talk about it first. Talk to each other. How does it feel? Right, you might get a bit of noise in the class. We know teachers don't like noise, but you can get the children talking to each other, and they can be saying it's yucky, it's horrible, it's sticky, it's warm, it's gooey. And as a teacher, you can be zoning into what these children are saying to each other. And it's marvelous, isn't it, Sarah, having this kind of like chatter.
And you can actually, use it at different stages, because, to begin with, in reception, you could do this and you might just get the odd word, or some of them might give you, a sentence or a couple of sentences or things, a lot of vocabulary coming on. You could do it in year 1 or even in year 2. And then you'll be getting, whole stories, several page stories, because the children's understanding and ability have gone on. So again, just because this is a book that tends to be read in reception, it doesn't mean that the year 1 or year 2 teacher could borrow it and do exactly the same things, but have completely different outcomes and expectations.
Yeah. I remember bringing these books back to children who'd done them 2 years prior and bringing them out, and they were delighted. They remembered, oh my gosh, I love the monsters. And now they're at a better point to re-engage with these books. They can read them super easy, but they love the fact that they can use them. So if you've got a moment, put in your chat box, how would you feel if you were sitting in this pool of glug? Let's see if you can give us some adjective to describe what it would feel like sitting in this pool of goo. Let's see if we're getting any. Soggy and sad. Warm and squishy. Wow. Getting a lot coming through here. Relaxed. I love that. Relaxed. Silly, slimy, cold and slimy. So we're hearing a lot of adjectives, and children are listening to that and giving it a context. So when we do go back and revisit the text, we could do a lot of things with this sentence. We could say, let's change the word soggy for something. And all those words that you've got, you've put them on the board, we could go back and say we could change some of these adjectives. We still have the sentence structure, but we can change some adjectives. So the children are learning about, for later on, parsing, how adjectives fit in with the sentence structure. And we could be showing them just how a structure can work, and you can use the interchangeability of words. Isn't that right, Sarah?
Yeah. Not quite up to the thesaurus work yet, but again, it's increasing vocabulary, and it's getting them to think which words mean the same, but not necessarily quite the same. And you can make it. If it's not muddy, it might be clean. If it's not soggy, you can move the concepts on all the while that you're using them.
Yeah. So basically, the children are rewriting the sentence without it being too not deconstructing it too much. And you have that visual cue. And as Sarah just said, they're learning about expanding their vocabulary so that they have something to do that. And if we look at some of these pages that can be used when we've done the story, and we've probably reread it, done it as a group, as the teacher, we can also start asking a lot of other questions, like what happened before? Why are they so tired? Now, you probably know the story. The child probably knows the story, but we can say, let's reinvent the beginning. What do you think happened after? Why do they need a drink? And why does Inky say yum, yum? And of course, they have a story there, but we could say, let's change that a little bit. They're good for story starters as well, aren't they, Sarah?
Absolutely. Sometimes you just need that little encouragement to begin with. And again, it's just a question of thinking and asking questions. Are they on holiday? Where have they gone on holiday? And again, the children can base it on their own experience, but take those experiences and project them onto the characters.
Yes. And also, again, it's going back to that very safe structure of a story they have, and also how they can rebuild it. And this is one that we know happens a lot, that children, while they're doing stories, take a lot of elements from stories they know really well. And that's not a bad thing at all, because just as we mentioned at the beginning, children often struggle with the middle and the end. So if they have a kind of idea of the middle of the end, they can kind of string that narrative together, even if it's only a paragraph. It's their beginning to understand how the story works and how they can put that into creative writing, or just writing generally. So I love this one, the giant turnip. So we could use this to rewrite the story, and also group activity. And you're thinking, how could it be a group activity? Because what you could do is ask, if you've got 3 groups in your class, they can all choose another vegetable. And you could change the beginning of the end. And this works quite well, doesn't it, Sarah?
It does. And the group of people, it's a great one for acting out, but, change it to Inky Snake, be the ants, insects or whatever. People in their class. If somebody in their class, and then their friends come along and join them in. So you can use the story structure, but change the details and the characters in it. And I remember I had one little lass who all her stories ended the same way. So it was always, and then they went home and had a cup of tea.
But at least she got to that point.
As far as she was concerned.
Yeah, and we've had some really good ideas here about bringing vegetables in and tying it down to kind of like tactile things with role play. And also children have got other concepts here, like science and size and weights. But it's a really good way, because also here we have dialogue, and we, as we've showed you with the other pages, we can change that slightly. And you can use this for group work and asking them, what would you change? What is your favorite thing about the story? Open it up. And also story writing circles. This works really well with older children, where you take like the beginning of the story and let them go around in a circle and keep adding bits to it, like one line. It's very funny. It's a great way for just doing minimal amount of writing. But if you have a clipboard and it goes round in a circle, you have the beginning of your enormous turnip, and each child gets to write one line. It's not overpowering, it's funny. And when you read it back, the children get a sense of, oh, that didn't make sense at all, but it was good fun. Audio recording for children who are struggling, or pair share with another child who can be a really good scribe, and going back to storyboards where children can work out exactly what they want to write. And talk about the story. This has a lot of value, doesn't it, Sarah?
Absolutely. Very, very important.
Yeah. And the 3 things you like about the story. And I remember a teacher doing this in class where he said it would be just overwhelming to ask children too much, because we normally only remember 3 chunks of information. Certainly children can only manage 3 chunks of information. So what 3 things did you like about the story? Tell your partner, talk about it. Why did you like it? So again, children are beginning to realize that curiosity with print, it's engaging them, they're talking about it. And then as a teacher, you can come back and say, what if it was a giant carrot? What if we had 3 enormous turnips? You can put that scenario, and what are they doing? You're asking them to think about probability and possibility, opening up another avenue of inquiry. And also social emotional learning. What did you like? What didn't you like? So again, we're doing cross-curricular themes here. And Sarah, this is very high now with a lot of the reading programs or literacy programs. There are threads coming through from other areas, aren't there?
Absolutely. And, you want all these threads, and you want to link it into ideas and skills and knowledge that they already have, because they're more likely to remember things, and you'll get a better outcome from it. And you can start linking out to broader things, to other bits of literature, James and the Giant Peach. There's lots of stories that actually involve giant vegetables, funnily enough. I can't think why. I don't really come across giant vegetables as an everyday thing, but it is very definitely a theme in a story. But the aim, taking vegetables, taking food, the food we eat, diet, sort of thing. From just a story, you've got life skills, as well as all these other things that are, going on. Taste some of these vegetables. Look at vegetables from a different, country, because food varies across the world. It's huge possibilities. You just start thinking sideways a bit that you can come up with.
Yeah, and I actually had to check about giant vegetables. As you can see, they really do exist. There are an abundance of giant vegetables that really do exist. So you can imagine if you have a small child, they have their book, their decodable reader with the illustrations, and then you present them with a photo and say, there really are giant vegetables. And that's a big thing for them to take on. And as we've mentioned, it does thread into so many different areas. Now, Sarah, maybe you'd like to explain that, can I use decodable readers from any other scheme while I'm working with Jolly Phonics?
Well, to be honest, this goes across all schemes, not just Jolly Phonics. But again, decodable mainly scheme that are linked to, because there is no definitive list of these are the sounds that you need to learn in which order. And if you remember, we said about decodable books, that everything's introduced in the order of the program. So for instance, in Jolly, we introduced the I as the IE, because we always try and use digraphs next to each other to begin with. In other programs, they might introduce it as the IDH. Therefore, PyPy and Magpie would be perfectly decodable for children doing Jolly. But if they've been taught the IDH, that would not be the case. So you do need to check that any books that are labelled decodable have the things in it that your children have learned. It doesn't mean you can't use decodable from other schemes, but you do have to make sure that you have covered the things that you are supposed to. And good decodable books always have a list somewhere inside the back page, wherever it is, which will state what children are supposed to know. You can always teach them the bits if they really don't know, and you need to. But you do need to make sure that your decodable readers you're giving the children have got the diagraphs and the letter stands in it and the alternatives in it that you have taught them. So it's not impossible, but it does take a little bit of input from the teacher. And it is best if you stick to the program that you are using, because then you don't have to do any thinking at all. But we all know that actually we've got lots of resources and lots of books, and we want to get to read as many of them as possible. And of course, a book could be labelled a decodable reader. But again, as I just said, if they haven't been taught those particular correspondences, then it won't be decodable for them. But once you have taught all of the correspondences and alternatives, then all books will become decodable to that child or to the children that you are teaching. Just a question of making sure that the knowledge and the skills that you use in that book in the words that are being used are ones that you have done that the child knows.
I think
or doesn't mean that you can use it.
As you mentioned at the beginning, Sarah, it's really important that children are reading the letter sounds that they're learning in the program, because if you present them with things that they don't know, it's going to confuse them. And also that momentum that they're building with the decodable readers, we want that to continue. So it really is important that we have everything in the right place.
And we don't get things.
Yeah. And as you just mentioned, all books become decodable once you've learnt the entire alphabetic code. And more than anything, you also need vocabulary and comprehension, which is hugely important. And as you can see, we've only given you a little snapshot of some ideas to how to reuse your decodables, which are so important for the program, getting children to learn all the concepts that are within a page, because it's not just about deciphering, decoding, segmenting, it's about punctuation, capital letters, knowing how things go together. And it's very challenging for small children, isn't it, Sarah?
Absolutely. You think of how many words you need in order to tell a story. But all of those have to be understood and comprehended by the children, to be able to use them.
I think the most important thing, and I often get asked, is the books look very simple. And just going back to a point that Sarah mentioned, they may look simple, but you can do a lot with them. Remember, we're at the child's ability level. The books are there to help children with the abilities that they have from the program. So it would be hugely ambitious to try and pack too much into these books and not follow them in a progressive way, so that children are scaffolding all the knowledge they need to become successful readers and writers. So we've had quite a lot of questions, and I hope you have enjoyed the session as we're coming up towards the end. Are there any questions that we can fit in for the last couple of minutes that we have? Oh, what age can a learner start making use of the orange readers, Sarah?
The orange readers, they're one of our earlier sets. But again, as I said before, they need to have learnt the sounds before they get to reading a book. So typically for us, it would be 4 or 5-year-olds which is where we would start reading, where they start school and where they start reading.
Yeah. And I think we've had quite a few questions about understanding how the program works. We do have information on the webpage, color coding, and we recommend you don't jump the colors. Just because the child is flying through the books, make sure there's comprehension, make sure they're just not using the visual cues, and use the books in a way like we've showed you that are really proactive for deeper comprehension. So although children may fly through some of the earlier decodables, don't move on to the next level without teaching the sounds first. I've been in classes where they said the child is a magnificent reader and they're flying through the books, but they're not really. They're just making an attempt. Isn't that right, Sarah, that they can go through too quickly without any skills being learned?
You need to check comprehension. You can have blending is it's a skill, and it's in reaction to the letters that are on the page in front of them. And actually, children can blend things and have no idea at all what they're actually reading. So you do need to make sure that they're not just blending the words and reading the actual words off the page without the understanding behind them. And it may be some children are excellent at blending, but they don't have that comprehension and vocabulary behind them, in which case they may need to stay on a level longer. Others, will blend quite happily, understand everything, so they can move along quickly. Every child is different. As a teacher, you need to be monitoring and assessing and making sure that, just because they can blend the word, doesn't mean that they can just whiz up the scales, because there's more to it than that.
And that's why being able to provide you with ideas to stay on the level longer is a huge benefit for you as a teacher. Opening up the book to keep the child on the level that they are really secure with, but you can use it in a different way and then move on to the next level securely. Well, it looks like we're running out of time, Sarah. So, so please let us know what webinars you'd like to have in the future. And we have great trainers out there with great ideas, and we'd love to be able to let them present sessions as well, so that they can talk about, things that they really enjoy within the program. So it's a big thank you to everyone. And Sarah, we'll say goodbye for now.
We will indeed. Have a lovely weekend, everyone.
Thank you very much for joining us. Bye for now.